What is uninsured motorist coverage as it relates to motorcyclists? That's our topic for today's episode of Main Street Law. I'm Cindy Speaker. My guest is Indiana motorcycle injury lawyer Randy Sevenish of Sevenish Law in Indianapolis, Indiana. So Randy, how are you today?
I'm great, Cindy. How about yourself?
Pretty good, thanks. Well, Randy, as I understand it, knowing insurance coverage inside and out is an important part of a personal injury practice. And I know there's a coverage called uninsured motorist coverage, but let me ask you this. What is uninsured motorist coverage, and is it important for motorcyclists to carry?
Well, I'll tell you, Cindy, uninsured motorist coverage, or what we call coverage for short, is one of the most overlooked and most important types of coverages that bikers can have. And aside from liability coverage that protects the biker when they themselves are at fault, there's just no other more important coverage for those riding motorcycles than uninsured motorist coverage, other than perhaps underinsured coverage, which is at least equally as important. So to answer your question, coverage protects you and the people you love when the wrongdoer is at fault and has no insurance and no assets or means to otherwise compensate you. So in that case, you have, in essence, purchased insurance coverage before a crash for the uninsured driver.
Okay. Now, is that something that all motorcyclists have? Is it mandated by law?
Well, amazingly, the answers are no and no. Insurance agents in my state, at least, are required only to offer coverage, but believe it or not, the law does not require it. So bikers can choose not to have it by waiving the coverage in writing, which is a very, very big mistake. And in my practice in recent years, I found a very troubling trend of bikers choosing not to have this very valuable form of coverage, thinking that they are saving money. The problem comes up is when bikers are injured by an uninsured driver and the bikers themselves have no coverage. They can, of course, still sue the uninsured driver, but usually these people fail to have sufficient assets to go after, and the uninsured driver can also file bankruptcy, and the injured biker still gets nothing. So whether you call it a big mistake, an error in judgment, or just a simple lack of understanding or knowledge, it makes no difference. Do not ride without this coverage.
Okay. Now, let me ask you this. How much do you recommend that a biker have in terms of coverage?
Well, that really depends mostly upon the amount of risk that they are willing to take and gamble with. And unlike liability coverage, which is intended to pay someone else for their injuries caused by the biker's negligence, coverage provides compensation to the motorcyclists themselves, to their family members, passengers, etc., when injured by an uninsured person. So for that reason alone, it just makes sense to purchase at least as much coverage as they have in what's called liability coverage. We strongly recommend that based upon their assets and comfort level that they should have at least $250,000 per person and $500,000 per accident. And although probably beyond the scope of this question, if they also own a home and indeed have coverage on their bike for 250, 500, they should also consider securing what's called an umbrella policy of $1 to $2 million for just a couple of hundred more dollars annually.
Okay. Now, let me ask you this. Suppose that someone has auto coverage. Is that going to be of any help to them if they don't have it for their motorcycle and maybe there's an accident that occurs?
Be very careful here. It really depends upon the ownership of the vehicle they're on when this happens. Many motorcyclists include their bike on the same policy as their car, truck, and even homeowners, but some choose to have a completely different company to insure their bike for some reason. And the general rule is that coverage follows you wherever you go. So that means that whether you're in your vehicle or someone else's vehicle or in their truck or your truck, bicycle, moped, motorcycle, or even if you're jogging down the road. So typically coverage follows you, but most companies will exclude coverage if it is not specifically covered on the motorcycle owned by you without first paying for that coverage. So it's best just to have coverage on all vehicles you own, period. When in doubt, get with your agent and just read the fine print, because as I've always said, the big print giveth and the small print taketh away.
That's a great line and so true. Randy, if someone wants more information, how can they reach you?
Certainly, they can call me directly at 1-800-278-9200 or online at www.sevenish, sevenishlaw.com.
Randy, thanks so much for your time today.
Thank you, Cindy.
Until next time, this is Cindy Speaker for Main Street Law.